Let's do it then. All right, so we're going to be doing William Gibson's Virtual Light. We are starting at Chapter 3, Not a Nice Party. Get the mic a little more out here. Sorry, I just need a little more light. Okay. Chevette never stole nice things. Or anyway, not from other people. And definitely not when she was pulling tags. Except this one bad Monday when she took this total asshole's sunglasses. But that was because she just didn't like him. How it was, she was standing there by this 9th floor window, just looking out at the bridge, past the gray shells of the big stores, when he'd come up behind her. She'd almost managed to make out Skinner's room there, high up in the old cables, when the tip of a finger found her bare back, under Skinner's jacket, under her t-shirt, touching her. She wore that jacket everywhere, like some kind of armor. She knew that nanopore was the only thing to wear riding this time of year, but she wore Skinner's old horsehide anywhere, with her bar-coded Allied badges on the lapels, the little ball chains on the zippers swinging as she spun to knock that finger aside. Bloodshot eyes, a face that looked as if it were about to melt. He had a short, little greenish cigar in his mouth, but it wasn't lit. He took it out, swirled its wet end in a small glass of clear liquor, then took a long suck on it, grinning at her around it, like he knew she didn't belong here, not at a party like this, and not in any old but seriously expensive hotel up over Gary. But it had been the last tag of the day, a package for a lawyer, with Tenderloin's trash fires burning so close by, and around them huddled all those so terminally luckless, utterly and chemically lost, faces aglow in the fairy illumination of tiny glass pipes, eyes cancelled in that terrible and fleeting satisfaction, shivers that gave her, always. Locking and arming her bike in the hollow sound of the Morrissey's underground lot, she'd taken a service elevator to the lobby, where the security grunts tried to brace her for a package. But there was no way. She wouldn't deliver to anyone at all except this one very specific Mr. Garreau in 808, as stated right here on the tag. They ran a scanner across the barcode on her Allied badge, x-rayed the package, put her through a metal detector, and waved her into an elevator lined with pink mirrors and trimmed in bank vault bronze. So up she'd gone, to 8, to a corridor quiet as the floor of some forest in a dream. She found Mr. Garreau there, his shirtless sleeves white and his tie the color of freshly poured lead. He signed the tab without making eye contact. Package in hand, he'd closed the door's 3 brass digit in her face. She checked her hair in the mirrored polish italic 0. Her tail was sticking up okay in the back, but she wasn't too sure they'd got the front right. The spikes were still too long, wispy, sort of. She headed back down the hall, the hardware jingling on Skinner's jacket, her new SWAT trainers sinking into freshly vacuumed pile the color of rain-wet terracotta. But when the elevator doors opened, this Japanese girl fell out, or near enough, Chevette grabbing her beneath both arms and propping her up against the edge of the door. "Where potty?" "What folks gonna ask you?" Chevette said. "Floor 9, big party." The girl's eyes were all pupil, her bangs glossy as plastic. So Chevette, with a real glass wine glass full of real French wine in one hand, and the smallest sandwich she'd ever seen in the other, came to find herself wondering how long she had still had before the hotel's computer noticed she hadn't left the premises. Not that they were likely to come looking for her here, because someone had obviously put down good money to have this kind of party. Some really private kind, because she could see these people in a darkened bathroom smoking ice through a glass-blown pipe dolphin, its smooth curves illuminated by the fluttering bluish tongue of an industrial-strength lighter. Not just one room, either, but lots of them, all connected up. And lots of people, too. The men mostly gotten up in those suits with the four-button jackets, stiff shirts with those choker collars, and no tie, but a little jeweled stud. The women wore clothes Chevette had only seen in magazines. Rich people had to be. And foreign, too. Though maybe rich was foreign enough. She managed to get the Japanese girl horizontal on a long green couch, where she was snoring now, and safe enough unless somebody sat on her. Looking around, Chevette had seen that she wasn't the only underdressed local to have somehow scammed entry. The guy in the bathroom working the big yellow Bic, for starters, but he was the extreme case. Then there were a couple of pretty obvious tenderloin working girls, too, but maybe that was no more than the accepted amount of local color for whatever this was supposed to be. But then this asshole's right in her face, grinning his mean-ass drunken grin, and she's got her hand on a little folding knife, something else she's borrowed from Skinner. It has a hole in the blade, and you can press the tip of your thumb into and snap it open one-handed. That blade's under 3 inches, broad as a soup spoon, widely serrated in ceramic. Skinner says a fractal knife, its actual edge more than twice as long as the blade itself. "You're not enjoying yourself, I think," he says. "European, but she's not sure which flavor. Not French or German. His jacket's leather, too, but nothing like Skinner's. Some thin-skinned animal whose hide drapes like heavy silk, the color of tobacco." She thinks of the smell of the yellow spine magazines up in Skinner's room, some of the old pictures, only shades of gray, the way the city looks, sometimes from a bridge. "Doing fine till you showed up," Chevette says, thinking it's probably time to go. This guy's bad news. "Tell me," he says, looking appraisingly at the jacket and the t-shirt and the bike pants, "what services you offer?" "The fuck's that supposed to mean?" "Clearly," he says, pointing at the tenderloin girls across the room, "you offer something more interesting?" He rolls his tongue wetly around the word. "Than these two." "Fuck that," Chevette says. "I'm a messenger." And a funny pause crosses his face, like something's gotten past his drunk, nudged him. Then he throws back his head and laughs like it's the biggest joke in the world. She gets a look a lot like a very white, very expensive-looking teeth. "Rich people never have any metal in their teeth," Skinner's told her. "I say something funny?" The asshole wipes his eyes. "But we have something in common, you and I." "I doubt it." "I am a messenger," he says, though he looks to Chevette like a moderate hill would put him in line for a pig valve. "A courier," he says, like he's reminding himself. "So proj on," she says, and steps around him. But just then the lights go out. The music starts, and it's the intro to Chrome Coran's She's God's Girlfriend. Chevette, who has kind of a major thing for Chrome Coran, cranks them on her bike whenever she needs a boost to prod on. Just moves with it now, everybody dancing, even the icers from the bathroom. With asshole gone, or anyway forgotten, she notices how much better these people look dancing. She finds herself opposite this girl in a leather skirt, little black boots with jingling silver spurs. Chevette grins. The girl grins back. "You from the city?" the girl asks, as She's God's Girlfriend ends, and for a second Chevette thinks she's being asked if she's a municipal messenger. The girl-woman is older than she thought, late 20s maybe, but definitely older than Chevette. Good-looking without looking like it came out of a kit. Dark eyes, dark haircut. "San Francisco?" Chevette nods. The next tune's older than she is. That black guy who turned white, and then his face fell in, she guesses. She looks down for her drink. They all look alike. Japanese doll dances past, bangs swinging, no recognition in her eyes as she sees Chevette. "Cody can usually find all he needs in San Francisco," the woman says, a tiredness behind her voice, but at the same time you can tell she thinks it's all pretty funny. German, Chevette thinks by her accent. "Who?" The woman raises her eyebrows. Host?" But she's still got her wide, easy grin. "Just sorta walked in myself." "Could I only say the same?" the woman laughs. "Why?" "Then I could walk out again." "You don't like it?" Up close she smells expensive. Chevette's suddenly worried about how she must smell herself after a day on the bike with no shower. But the woman takes her elbow and leads her aside. "You don't know Cody?" "No." Chevette sees the drunk, the asshole, through the doorway into the next room where the lights are still on. He's looking right at her. "And I think maybe I should leave now, okay?" "You don't have to, please. I only envy you the option." "You German?" "Padanian." Chevette knows that's part of what used to be Italy, the northern part, she thinks. "Who's this Cody?" "Cody likes a party. Cody likes this party. This party's been going on for several years now. When it isn't here, it's in London, Prague, Macau." A boy is moving through the crowd with a tiny tray of drinks. He doesn't look to Chevette like he works for the hotel. His stiff white shirt's not so stiff anymore. It's open all the way, and wrinkled tail's hanging loose. She sees he has one of those things like a little steel barbell through one nipple. His stiff collar's popped off at the front and sticks up behind his neck like a slipped halo. The woman takes a glass of white wine when he offers the tray. Chevette shakes her head. There's a white saucer on the tray with pills and what looks like twists of Dancer. The boy winks at Chevette and moves on. "You find this strange?" The woman drinks her wine off and tosses the empty glass over her shoulder. Chevette hears it break. "Huh?" "Cody's party." "Yeah, I guess. I just walked in." "Where do you live?" "The bridge." Watching for the reaction. The grin widens. "Really? It looks so mysterious. I'd like to go there, but there's no tours, and they say it's dangerous." "It's not," Chevette says, then hesitates. "Just don't dress up so much, all right? But it's not dangerous, not even as much as the neighborhood around here." Thinking of the ones around the trash fires. "Just don't go on Treasure Island. Don't go all the way to Oakland. Stay over on the suspension side." "You like it, living there?" "Shit, yes. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else." The woman smiles. "You're very lucky then, I think." "Well," Chevette says, feeling clumsy, I gotta go. My name's Maria. Chevette, offering her hand almost like her own other name, Chevette Marie. They shake. Goodbye, Chevette. You have a nice party, okay? This is not a nice party. Settling the wide shoulders of Skinner's jacket, Chevette nods to the woman Maria and begins to work her way through the crowd, which is tighter now by several degrees, like maybe this Cody's friends are still arriving. More Japanese here now, she notices, all of them serious suits. Their wives or secretaries or whatever are all wearing pearls, but evidently this doesn't prevent them getting into the spirit of the thing. It's gotten noisier, too, as people have gotten more whacked. There's a loud, constant blur of party noise you get when the drinks kick in, and now she wants to be out of there all that much faster. She finds herself stuck near the door to the bathroom where she'd been seeing the icers. But it's closed now. A bunch of French people are talking French and laughing and waving their hands around, but Chevette can hear somebody vomiting in there. Coming through, she says, the man with a bow tie and a gray crew cut, and she just pushes past him, spilling part of his drink. He says something after her in French. She feels really claustro now, like she does up in offices sometimes when a receptionist makes her wait to pick something up, and she sees the office people walking back and forth, wonders whether it all means anything or if they're just walking back and forth. Or maybe the wine's gotten to her, a little, because drinking isn't something she does much, and now she doesn't like the taste of it in the back of her throat. And suddenly, there's her drunk, her Euro, with his unlit cigar, sweaty brow too close to the dull-eyed, vaguely worried face of one of the Tenderloin girls. He's got her backed into a corner, and everyone's jammed so tight, this close to the door in the corridor, freedom, that Chevette finds herself pressed up against his back for a second. Not that that interrupts whatever indefinitely dreary shit he's laying down for the girl. No, he does jam his elbow hard back into Chevette ribs to get himself more space. And Chevette, glancing down, sees something sticking out of a pocket in the tobacco-colored leather. Then it's in her hand, down the front of her bike pants. She's out the door. That asshole hasn't even noticed. In the sudden quiet of the corridor, party sounds receding as she heads for the elevator. She wants to run. She wants to laugh, too. But now she's starting to feel scared. Walk. Past the party's build-up of trays, dirty glasses, plates, remembering the security grunts in the lobby, the thing stuck down her pants. Down a corridor that opens off this one, she sees the doors of a service elevator spread wide now and welcoming. A Central Asian kid with a plant-splattered steel cart stacked up with flat rectangles that are television screens. He gives her a careful look as she edges in beside him. His face is all cheekbones, bright hooded eyes, his hair shaved up high in one of those near vertical do's all these guys favor. He has a security badge clipped to the front of his clean gray work shirt, and a Virtufax slung around his neck on a red nylon cord. Basement, Chevette says. His fax buzzes. He raises it, pushes the button, peers into the eyepiece. The thing in her bike pants starts to feel huge. Then he drops the fax back to his chest, blinks at her, and pushes a button marked B6. The doors rumble shut, and Chevette closes her eyes. She leans back against the big quilted pads hung on the walls and wishes she were up in Skinner's room, listening to the cables creak. The floor there's a layer of 2x4s laid on edge. The very top of the hump of the cable, riding its steel saddle, sticks up through the middle. And Skinner says there are 17,464 strands of wire in that cable. Each one's about as thick as a pencil. You can press your ear against it and hear the whole bridge sing when the wind's just right. The elevator stops at 4 for no reason at all. Nobody there when the door opens. Chevette wants to press B6 again, but she makes herself wait for the kid with the facts to do it. He does. And B6 is not the garage she so thoroughly wants it to be, but this maze of 100-year-old concrete run tunnels floored in cracked asphalt tile with big old pipes slung in iron brackets along the ceiling. She slips out while he's fiddling with one of the wheels on his cart. A century's worth of padlocked walk-in freezers, 50 vacuum cleaners charging themselves at a row of numbered stations, rolls of broadloom stacked like logs, more people in work clothes, some in kitchen whites, but she's trying for tag-pulling attitude and looks like, she hopes, like she's making a delivery. She finds a narrow stairway and climbs. The air is hot and dead. Motion sensors click the lights for her at the start of each flight. She feels the whole weight of this old building pressing down on her, but her bike is there on B2, behind a column of nicked concrete. Back off, it says whenever she's 5 feet away. Not loud, like a car, but it sounds like it'd mean it. Under its coat of spray-on imitation rust and an artful bandaging of silver duct tape, the geometry of the paper cord carbon-wrapped frame makes Chevette's thighs tremble. She slips her left hand through the recognition loop behind the seat. There's a little double zick as the particle brakes let go. Then she's up and on it. She's never felt better as she pumps up the oil-stained ramp and out of there. Excuse me for 1 second. Chapter 4. Career Opportunities. Rydell's roommate, Kevin Tartovsky, wore a bone through his nose and worked in a windsurfing boutique called Just Blow Me. Monday morning, when Rydell told him he'd quit his job with Intensecure, Kevin offered to try and find him a job, something in sales, in the beach culture line. "You've got an okay build, basically," Kevin said, looking at Rydell's bare chest and shoulders. Rydell was still wearing the orange trunks he'd worn when he'd gone to see Hernandez. He'd borrowed them from Kevin. He'd just taken his cast off, deflating it and crumpling it into a 5-gallon plastic paint bucket that served as a wastebasket. The bucket had a big self-adhesive daisy on the side. "You could work out a little more regularly, and maybe get some tats, tribal, black work." "Kevin, I don't know how to surf, windsurf, anything. Hardly been in the ocean in my life, a couple times down in Tampa Bay." It was about 10 in the morning, and Kevin had the day off work. "Sales is about providing an experience, Barry. Customer needs information, you provide it, but you give them an experience, too." Kevin tapped his 2-inch spindle of smooth, white beef bone by way of illustration. "Then you sell him a new outfit." "But I don't have a tan." Kevin was the approximate color and sheen of a pair of mid-brown Cole Haan loafers that Rydell's aunt had given him for his 15th birthday. This had nothing to do with either genetics or exposure to the unfiltered sunlight, but was the result of regular injections and a complicated regimen of pills and lotions. "Well," Kevin admitted, "you would need a tan." Rydell knew that Kevin didn't windsurf, and never had, but that he did bring home discs from the shop and play them on a goggle set, going over the various moves involved. And Rydell had no doubt that Kevin could provide every bit of information a prospective buyer might desire, and that the all-important experience, his cordovan tan, gym-tuned physique, and that manly bone through his nose, he got lots of attention, mainly from women, though it didn't actually seem to do that much for him. What Kevin sold primarily was clothing, expensive kind that supposedly kept the UV and pollutants in the water off you. He had 2 whole cartons full of the stuff, stacked in their one-room closet. Rydell, who currently didn't have much in the way of a wardrobe, was welcome to paw through there and borrow whatever took his fancy, which wasn't a lot as it turned out, because windsurfing gear tended to be Dayglow, Black Nanopore, or Mirrorflex. A few of the jazzier items had UV-sensitive Just Blow Me logos that appeared on days when the ozone was particularly shabby, as Rydell had discovered the last time he'd gone to the farmer's market. He and Kevin were sharing one of the 2 bedrooms in a 60s house in Mar Vista, which meant sea view, but there wasn't any. Someone had rigged up a couple of sheets of drywall down the middle of the room. On Rydell's side, the drywall was covered with the same big self-adhesive daisies and a collection of souvenir bumper stickers from places like Magic Mountain, Nissan County, Disneyland, Skywalker Park. There were 2 other people sharing the house, 3 if you counted the Chinese girl out in the garage, but she had her own bathroom out there. Rydell bought a futon with most of his first month's pay from Secure. He'd bought it at the stall in the market, when they were cheaper there. The stall was called Futon Mouth, which Rydell thought was pretty funny. The Futon Mouth girl had explained how you could slip the metro guy on the platform at 20, and he'd let you get on the train with the rolled-up futon, which came in a big green plastic sack that reminded Rydell of a body bag. Lately, wanting to take off the cast, he'd spent a lot of time on that futon, staring up at those bumper stickers. He wondered if whoever put them there had actually bothered to go to all those places. Hernandez had once offered him work at Nissan County. Secure had the Rent-A-Cop franchise there. His parents honeymooned at Disneyland. Skywalker Park was up in San Francisco, and it had been called Golden Gate before, and he remembered a couple of fairly low-key riots on the television when they'd privatized it. "You online to any of the job search nets, Barry?" Rydell shook his head. "This one's on me," Kevin said, passing Rydell the helmet. Wasn't anything like Karen's slick little goggles, just a white plastic rig like the kids use for games. "Put it on, I'll dial for you." "Well," Rydell said, "this is nice, Kevin, but you don't have to go through all this trouble." Kevin touched the bone in his nose. "Well, there's the rent." There was that. Rydell put the helmet on. "Now," Sonia said, just as perky as could be, "we're showing you that you did graduate from this post-secondary training program?" "Academy," Rydell corrected. "Police." "Yes, Barry, but we're showing that you were then employed for a total of 18 days before being placed on suspension?" Sonia looked like a cartoon of a pretty girl. No pores, no texture anywhere. Her teeth were very white, and she looked like a single unit, something that could be snapped out intact for closer inspection, but not for cleaning, because there was no need. Cartoons didn't eat. She had wonderful tits, though. She had the tits Rydell would have drawn for her if he'd been a talented cartoonist. "Well," Rydell said, thinking of Turvey, "I got into some trouble after they signed me to patrol." Sonia nodded brightly. "I see, Barry." Rydell wondered what she could see, or what the expert system that used her as a hand puppet could see. or how it saw. What did someone like Rydell look like to an employment agency's computer system? Not like much, he'd decided. Then you moved to Los Angeles, Barry, and we show 10 weeks of employment with the Inten Secure Corporation's Residential Armed Response Branch. Driver with experience of weapons. Rydell thought of the rocket pods slung under the LAPD chopper. Probably they'd got one of those chain guns there, too. Yep, he agreed. And you've resigned your position with Inten Secure? Guess so. Sonia beamed at Rydell as though he'd just admitted shyly to a congressional appointment or a postdoctoral degree. Well, Barry, she said, let me put my thinking cap on for just a second. She winked, then closed her big cartoon eyes. Jesus, Rydell thought. He tried to glance sideways, but Kevin's helmet didn't give any peripherals, so there was nothing there, just Sonia, the empty rectangle of her desk, stretchy details suggesting an office, and the employment agency's logo behind her on the wall. The logo that made her look like the anchorwoman on a news channel that only reported very good news. Sonia opened her eyes. Her smile became incandescent. You're from the South, she said. Uh-huh. Plantations, Barry. Magnolias, tradition, but certain darkness as well, a Gothic quality. Faulkner. Huh? Nightmare folk art, Barry. Ventura Boulevard, Sherman Oaks. Kevin watched as Rydell removed the helmet and wrote an address and telephone number on the back of last week's People. The magazine belonged to Monica, the Chinese girl in the garage. She always got hers printed out, so there was never any mention of scandal or disaster, but with the triple helping of celebrity romance, particularly anything to do with the British royal family. Something for you, Barry? Kevin looked hopeful. Maybe, Rydell said. This place in Sherman Oaks. I'll call him up. Check it out. Kevin fiddled with his nose bone. I can give you a lift, he said. There was a big painting of the Rapture in the windows of the Nightmare folk art. Rydell knew paintings like that from the sides of Christian vans parked beside shopping centers. Lots of bloody car wrecks and disasters with all the saved souls flying up to meet Jesus, whose eyes were a little too bright for comfort. This one was a lot more detailed than the ones he remembered. Each one of those saved souls had its own individual face, like it actually represented somebody, and a few of them reminded him of famous people, but it still looked like it had been painted by either a 15-year-old or an old lady. Kevin had let him off at the corner of Sepulveda, and he'd walked 2 blocks, looking for the place, past a crew in wide-brimmed hard hats who were pouring the foundations for a palm tree. Rydell wondered if Ventura had real ones before the virus. The replacements were so popular now, people wanted them put in everywhere. Ventura was one of those Los Angeles streets that just went on forever. He knew he must have driven Gunhead past Nightmare Folk Art more times than he could count, but these streets looked completely different when you walked them. For one thing, you were pretty much alone. For another, you could see how cracked and dusty a lot of the buildings were. Empty spaces behind dirty glass, with a yellow pile of junk mail on the floor beside, and inside maybe a puddle of what couldn't be rainwater, so you wondered what it was. You'd pass a couple of those, then a place selling sunglasses for 6 times the rent Rydell paid for his half of the room in Mar Vista. The sunglasses place would have some kind of rent-a-cop inside to buzz you in. Nightmare Folk Art was like that, sandwiched between a dead hair extension franchise and some kind of failing real estate place that sold insurance on the side. Nightmare Folk Art, Southern Gothic. The letters hand-painted, all lumpy and hairy, like mosquito legs in a cartoon, white on black, with a couple of expensive cars parked out front. A silver-gray Range Rover looking like Gunhead dressed up for the prom, and one of those little antique Porsche two-seaters that always looked to Rydell like the wind-up key had fallen off. He'd given the Porsche a wide berth. Cars like that tended to have hypersensitive anti-theft systems, not to mention hyper-aggressive. There was a rent-a-cop looking at him through the armored glass of the door. Not Intensecure, but some off-brand. Rydell had borrowed a pair of pressed chinos from Kevin. They were a little tight in the waist, but they beat the hell out of the orange trunks. He had on a black Intensecure uniform shirt with the patches ripped off, his Stetson, and his SWAT shoes. He wasn't sure black really made it with the khaki. He pushed the button. The rent-a-cop buzzed him in. "Got an appointment with Justine Cooper," he said, taking the sunglasses off. "With a client," the rent-a-cop said. He looked about 30, and like he should have been out on a farm in Kansas or somewhere. Rydell looked over and saw a skinny woman with black hair. She was talking to a fat man who had no hair at all. Trying to sell him something, it looked like. "I'll wait," Rydell said. The farmer didn't answer. The state law said he couldn't have a gun, just the industrial-strength stunner he wore in a beat-up plastic holster. But he probably did anyway. One of those little Russian holdouts that chambered some god-awful overheated caliber, originally intended for killing the engine blocks of tanks. The Russians, never too safety-minded, had the market in Saturday night specials. Rydell looked around. That old Rapture was big at Nightmare Folk Art, he decided. Those kind of Christians, his father had always maintained, were just pathetic. The millennium had come and gone, no rapture to speak of, and here they were, still beating that same drum. Sublet and his folks down in their trailer camp in Texas, watching old movies for Reverend Fallon, at least had some kind of spin on it. He tried to sneak a look, see what the lady was trying to sell the fat man, but she caught his eye, and that wasn't good. So he worked his way deeper into the shop, pretending to check out the merchandise. There was a whole section of these nasty-looking, spidery wreath things behind a glass in faded gilt frames. The wreaths looked to Rydell like they were made of fuzzy old hair. There were tiny little baby coffins, all corroded, and one of them had been planted with ivy. There were coffee tables made out of what Rydell supposed were tombstones, old ones, the lettering worn down so faint you couldn't read it. He paused beside the bedstead, welded together from a bunch of those pickaninny jockey boys it had been against the law to have in your lawn in Knoxville. The jockey boys had all been freshly painted with big, red-lipped watermelon-eating grins. The bed was spread with a hand-stretched quilt pattern, like a Confederate flag. When he looked for a price tag, all he found was a yellow sold sticker. "Mr. Rydell, may I call you Barry?" Justine Cooper's jaw was so narrow that it looked like she wouldn't have room for the ordinary complement of teeth in there. Her hair was cut short, a polished brown helmet. She wore a couple of dark flowing things that Rydell supposed were meant to conceal the fact that she was built more or less like a stick insect. She didn't sound like she was from anywhere south of anywhere, much, and there was a visible tension strung through her, like wires. Rydell saw the fat man walk out, pausing on the sidewalk to deactivate the Range Rover's defenses. "Sure." "You're from Knoxville?" He noticed she was breathing deliberately, like she was trying to not hyperventilate. "That's right." "You don't have much of an accent." "Well, I wish everybody felt that way." He smiled, but she didn't smile back. "Is your family from Knoxville, Mr. Rydell?" "Shit," he thought. "Go ahead, call me Barry." "My father was, I guess. My mother's people are from up around Bristol, mostly." Justine Cooper's dark eyes, not showing much white, were looking right at him, but they didn't seem to be registering anything. He guessed she was somewhere in her 40s. "Miss Cooper?" She gave a violent start, as though he'd goosed her. "Miss Cooper, what are those wreath sort of sayings in the old frames there?" Pointing at them. "Memorial wreaths. Southwestern Virginia, late 19th, early 20th century." Good, Rydell thought. Get her talking about the stock. He walked over to the frame wreaths for a closer look. "Looks like hair," he said. "It is," she said. "What else could it be?" "Human hair?" "Of course." "You mean like dead people's hair?" He now saw the minute braiding, the hair twisted up into tiny flower-like knots. It was lusterless and had no particular color. "Mr. Rydell, I'm afraid that I may have wasted your time." She moved tentatively in his direction. "When I spoke with you on the phone, I was under the impression that you might be, well, much more of the South." "How do you mean, Miss Cooper?" "What we offer here is a certain vision, Mr. Rydell, a certain darkness as well, a gothic quality." Damn, that talking head in the agency display had been playing all this shit back word for word. "I don't suppose you've read Faulkner?" She raised one hand to brush something invisible, something hanging in front of her face. There it was again. "No." "No, I didn't think so. I'm hoping to find someone who can help convey that very darkness, Mr. Rydell. The mind of the South, the fevered dream of sensuality." Rydell blinked. "But you don't convey that to me." It felt like the invisible cobweb had come back. Rydell looked at the rent-a-cop, but he didn't seem to be listening to any of this. Hell, he seemed to be asleep. "Lady," Rydell said carefully, "I think you're crazier than a sack full of assholes." Her eyebrows shot up. "There," she said. "There what?" "Color, Mr. Rydell. Fire. That brooding verbal polychromes of an almost unthinkable advanced decay." Rydell had to think about that. He found himself looking at the jockey boy bed. "Don't you ever get any black people in here complaining about stuff like this?" "On the contrary," she said, a new edge in her tone. "We do quite good, because with the more affluent residents of the South Central, they, at least, have a sense of irony. I suppose they have to." Now he'd have to walk to whatever the nearest station was, take the subway home, and tell Kevin Tarkovsky that he hadn't been Southern enough. The rent-a-cop was letting him out. "Where exactly you from, Miss Cooper?" he asked her. "New Hampshire," she said. He was on the sidewalk, the door closing behind him. "Fucking Yankees," he said. "The Porsche Roadster." It was what his father would have said, but he had a hard time now connecting it to anything. One of those big, articulated German cargo rigs went by, the kind that burned canola oil. Rydell hated those things. The exhaust smelled like fried chicken. That's the end of Chapter 4. Next, we'll do Chapter 5, Hay Problems.